Hi, I'm Shayla, and this is Moms Learning with Moms. This is a place where we come together, learn from real experiences. Go ahead and subscribe if you want to be part of a team of moms that learn together and grow together. So today we have Jenn with us. She's my sister-in-law. She's great. She also has a lot of experience in child development. That's what her education is in. She has 6 children, and she's had some heartbreaking experiences and also some really inspiring ones. And so we're going to turn some time over to her with hypnobirthing is what we're going to talk about, and just her story of what led to that and her experiences with it. All right, Jenn, you want to start off?
Yeah, I figured I would start with just a little bit of background, kind of what my history is and how I got to the point of choosing hypnobirthing for my last 2 births. So with my first birth, we found out at 28 weeks that our daughter had passed away. Just past 19 years, so a little bit tender right now. I was at a point in my pregnancy where we were just kind of starting to think about birthing classes and what we wanted to do there, and so I was not prepared at all to give birth with her. But because I was in my 3rd trimester, I had to deliver her just like you would a full term baby, and so it was obviously a very emotional experience, but it was pretty physically grueling as well because my body was not prepared to give birth. And so with her, we decided it was quite late at night when we had gone to the hospital to see if everything was okay. And so this was all taking place in the middle of the night, and the anesthesiologist that was on call was not available, and so most of that delivery, I don't remember a lot of it, but as we got into the morning hours, the anesthesiologist finally came to place an epidural, and I was like, okay, finally I'm going to be able to feel some relief. Well, the epidural did not work, and so they had me rolling from side to side and trying to get that medication where it needed to be in order for that to work. And it kicked in probably 5 minutes after our daughter was delivered. So then I was numb for hours afterwards. So it did not help at all for the delivery. Kind of hampered our experience for the rest of, the time that we were able to have with her in the hospital. I wasn't able to get up and move around, and I was just kind of stuck in bed. So not an ideal experience. With our next birth, I was having contractions. I was 33 weeks and just kind of assumed Braxton Hicks, starting to hit that point in my pregnancy where my body was maybe starting to prepare. It still seemed a little bit early, but where I hadn't had a typical experience with our first, I really didn't know what to expect. Again, had not taken a childbirthing class yet. We were kind of on the cusp of that timing wise. We were just trying to wait for some things to fall into place, and went into the hospital just to make sure that everything was okay, because we were obviously extra nervous and just concerned. And the nurses said, it looks like you're just dehydrated. We'll get you an IV. We'll hydrate you. We'll keep you overnight. Your doctor, again, it was on a Sunday, so my doctor was not in, and they decided to keep me overnight just to play it safe, and then she could come in and meet with us in the morning. And I anticipated I would be going home on bed rest. And they started the IV, seemed to work. My contractions died down, and as long as they had that fluid going, I was just fine. And so we slept through the night. It was, as comfortably as you can in a hospital bed. Was not a bad night. The next morning, about 7:30, the nurse shift changed. And when the new nurse came in to meet with us, she said, your doctor will be here in about 10 or 15 minutes. So I'm just going to check you so that I have all the information that I need to give her. And so she checked me, and her eyes kind of got big, and she says, well, you're at an 8. So you're having a baby today. And we were not expecting that at all. And so this was about this was about 7:30. My doctor came in at 7:45 and broke my water, and Ryan was born at 8:06. So within the course of about 45 minutes, we went from thinking we're just going to be going home this morning to having a baby in our arms. And I was not a pleasant patient in those 20 minutes. I started to panic, and the nurse immediately was like, "Do you want an epidural?" And I was like, "Yes, I do." And it was just a few minutes that passed, and she came back and she says, "There's just not going to be time." And so panic really set in at that point. I remember my nurse, I thought she was mean at the time, but she finally was like, "You have got to pull yourself together and calm down," because I was hyperventilating. I thought, there is no way, I can't do this. I cannot do this. And thankfully it was over very quickly and he was born fast, but that was the most painful experience I had ever had in my life. And I said, I will never do that again. I will never give birth without an epidural again. And so
and Ryan
from
was
there,
just little, right? Your second baby,
Ryan,
he was just little.
He was just a little under 5 pounds. So not very big. We were able to just very briefly see him, and then he was taken to the NICU and ended up being transferred to a larger hospital. And that's a whole other story, a NICU experience. So fast forward a couple years, and we decided it was time to add to our family. And we also, I feel like my stories involve, I kind of run the gamut. You know, we've had a stillbirth, we've had infertility, we've had premature birth, I'll get to all of it, but there's a lot going on here in my background. So we were experiencing some infertility, and thankfully was able to treat that with fairly minimal intervention, but we found out we were having twins. And so with twins, my doctor said, this is really the only situation when I let a patient decide if they would rather have a vaginal delivery or a C-section is when they're having multiples. I kind of would give some leeway as far as making a choice to just jump straight to a C-section. I did not want to make that decision. I really just wanted things to happen, and whatever was supposed to happen. And every appointment she would say, have you thought about delivery? What are your thoughts? What are you thinking that you want to do? And I don't want to think about it. And 24 weeks, my sister was getting married, and we had to travel about 3 hours away. And so I went in to have a doctor's appointment just to make sure that I was cleared to travel. And she found that I was starting to dilate. So I did not get to go to my sister's wedding. I instead went straight to labor and delivery, where I was in and out for the next 8 weeks on bed rest at home. I would go every Friday to the doctor, and I would almost always be kept over the weekend at labor and delivery. Then they would send me home. And when I hit about 30 weeks, 29, 30 weeks, my doctor said, you know what, I'm just keeping you here. This back and forth is clearly not working. And so I was in the hospital for a couple of weeks before the twins were finally born. And with a multiples delivery, there are certain parameters that have to be met in order to have a vaginal delivery. The positions of the babies have to be taken into account. And so baby A needs to be head down. And in our case, she was, but baby B was sitting transverse. And so she had given us a couple of scenarios in which the first baby would be delivered, and then as the second baby would kind of come down into the birth canal, they might shift into the correct position on their own. They could do a version in order to try and turn him if necessary. Or it could be that you would have that first baby vaginally, the second baby couldn't get into an optimal position, and they would do a C-section. And that just seemed like worst case scenario to me, to then have to recover from both kinds of deliveries. So at that point, we just decided, and I'll admit, there was also a part of me, it was February 13th, and I thought, oh, if I just wait for labor to progress, we might have Valentine's babies, and I don't want to have babies on a holiday. So we decided at that point, let's just do a C-section. So obviously had an epidural for that, went in, had the babies, recovered again. They were 32 weeks, so another stay in the NICU with them. But everything really went well as could be expected for what we were experiencing with them. Twins kind of buys you some time as far as deciding if you want any more children or not. Nobody dares ask you when you have two babies on each hip, if you're planning to expand your family anymore. And we kind of went back and forth quite a bit. There were times when I would think, okay, maybe we'll have one more. And Joseph would be like, no, I don't think so. And then later he would say, okay, I think I'm ready. And I'd say, I don't think I'm ready. So we went back and forth quite a bit, trying to decide if another baby was in the cards for us. And I was kind of going through, I was trying to figure out, do I want another baby or do I want another shot to get it right as far as pregnancy goes? Because I had now 4 babies. I had never taken a baby home with me from the hospital when I was discharged. And we didn't really know what the complications were that were causing, a stillbirth and premature deliveries. Obviously, with twins, there's a higher risk of a premature delivery, but we didn't know if there was something else going on that contributed to that. So we finally kind of got on the same page and thought, okay, let's have one more. And with her, we experienced a little bit more extensive infertility, and it was a long year of different doctors and different medications. And we were kind of at the end of our rope, and it was kind of like, okay, this is the last cycle I think that we're going to give this. And if it doesn't work, we have 3 healthy children. This is what is meant for us, and that's okay. And that cycle was successful. So we were very excited to be having another baby. I met with a high-risk perinatologist throughout that pregnancy, along with my regular OB, so that we could just really do everything that we could to try and get a full-term pregnancy this time. And everything with that pregnancy went well. I took progesterone injections from 16 to 36 weeks in order to try and support the pregnancy as best we could. The high-risk doctor that we met with said, as I look at your history, it really doesn't seem like there's any one thing that caused any of these. It's almost like you've been struck by lightning 3 separate times. And so he felt pretty confident that we would be able to get a full-term pregnancy. And so when I hit, gosh, it's been a long time, I don't remember. I want to say maybe 32 weeks or so, I started going in for weekly stress tests just to make sure that everything was going well. And as I approached the 39, was I 39 weeks with her week mark, her stress test started looking a little bit more variable. And so we decided at that point we would go ahead and induce. So that kind of takes us up to that point. But I'm going to back up a little bit and talk about how with her, I did hypnobirthing and how I kind of got to that point. When having babies, I think that we all kind of joke a little bit that time kind of eases the experience. And that's why we're able to have more children, because we forget how hard it can be. And so by the time Quincy was coming, it had been 8 years since that traumatic experience with Ryan, where I said, never again, I will never have another baby without an epidural. And enough time, 8 years was a good amount of time for me to be able to say, you know what, I did that. I did it. And it wasn't fun and it wasn't easy, but I did it. And I wasn't prepared at all. So what could my experience be if I was prepared? And that thought kind of started working inside of me. And I had a neighbor who had done hypnobirthing. And when she had her second baby, she had called when she went into labor and they were ready to leave for the hospital. She called me and asked me to come and stay with her daughter. And I remember very distinctly seeing her walk down her stairs to head to the car. And she had her earbuds in and she was in a zone. And she just didn't look like she was headed out the door to have a baby at all. Like she just was calm as a cucumber. And I thought, that is really interesting. And so as I talked with her more about her experience, it kind of started, I got pretty intrigued with the idea of natural childbirth. And, but hypnobirthing was still a little too new age for me. And as she talked about it, I thought, oh, okay, that's a little weird still. And so I really just started seeking out information about natural childbirth and started reading books. And, I read anything that Ina May Gaskin had written. And I had checked out I can't remember is it the Mongan method? Is that,
That's
I
right.
think that's a hypnobirthing method as well. I had checked that book out of the library, and it didn't really click with me, and so I kind of steered away from that. In the midst of all this, I kind of decided maybe I was interested in hiring a doula as well. And so the doula that I ended up hiring, her bread and butter was the Bradley method.
Mm.
And so we really kind of looked into that and read, all of the information there. Um, and I can't remember. It may have been my neighbor. I don't remember specifically who introduced me to hypnobabies, but that ended up being the method that we decided to go with. We had a local group of midwives and doulas and childbirth educators who did these monthly meetings and just information nights where you could learn more about, water birth or hypnobirthing or having a doula. And so I started attending those just to get more information. And there was a local doula who offered hypnobabies courses. And so as we kind of explored that, it really, honestly, at that point in our lives financially, it kind of started to feel a little bit like a burden. Like, I've got to buy the course, I've got to take the class, I have to hire a babysitter every night or every week for X number of weeks in order to attend these classes. And we just really didn't have the funds at that time to make that work. And so
Now, Jen,
yeah.
hypnobirthing and hypnobabies, that's different then?
So hypnobabies is like a specific course that you take to learn hypnobirthing. So the ultimate outcome is the same, but it's a
similar.
woman that has written a specific, way to achieve that. So, and I think there are a couple out there, but this was the one that I kind of landed on. And so they did have a home study course. So as we kind of looked at our budget, I had already hired a doula, and Joseph was kind of on board with that. He was a lot further away from if I thought it was new age, he thought it was like coming from Mars. It was just super out there for him. But he was supportive, and he wanted to help me, have the birth that I was hoping for. So as we kind of looked at our budget, we decided that we would do this home study course. And everything that I had read about it was that you really had to be committed to it. And it was going to be a lot harder not having an instructor to kind of guide you along, but that it was possible. And so I purchased this course, and we were in the process of finishing our basement so that we could have room for this new addition that was coming to our family. And so every night Joseph would get home from work, we'd have dinner, we'd get the kids, have some family time and get the kids to bed. He'd head into the basement to work on things, and I'd lay on the couch and I would listen to these tracks. And there was a book, a manual that went along with it. And then there were just these tracks that you would listen to practice and to kind of get yourself into that hypnosis zone. And it was a little weird to be able to, like, I didn't know, like, am I doing it right? Is this what it's, am I just, it was really hard to know if I was doing it right or not. If, is this actually going to help me, or am I just wasting my time? Yeah. And a lot of it honestly was like in Hypnobabies, she focuses a lot on terminology and kind of embracing, it's not labor pains, it's pressure waves. And, she kind of had these terms that were intended to give a lot more positive mindset into what you were doing. I may be a little bit too pragmatic for that, because I thought, it is labor, it is work. And if I know it's work, I can go into it knowing that. So I kind of had to take what made sense to me and embrace it, and be willing to set aside the parts of it that just didn't really fit with me, didn't really mesh with me. So kind of the intention when you're hypnobirthing is that you'll have a partner that is able to give you certain cues when you're, needing different things from that hypnosis. And so our intention initially was that Joseph would be that partner, and he would kind of go through the program with me. But honestly, it just didn't work for us. We couldn't get through a single lesson without just laughing our heads off, because he sounded so ridiculous trying to and for him, it was like, I'm doing this because you want me to, but it just felt so fake, I guess, because he didn't have the same investment in it that I did. And so we kind of decided, okay, there is a caveat with it. If you don't have a partner, it can be done on your own. And so we kind of decided that's what we would do. It was just too funny to try and listen to him get serious enough to make it work. And so we didn't. My doula had some background with hypnobirthing, but not a lot of experience with hypnobabies. And so we kind of focused for Joseph's role more on the Bradley method and the things that he could do along with that would support me. And then, I had my doula that had some background and knowledge about hypnobirthing. And then I just, from about 27 weeks on, every single night, I spent at least an hour listening to those tracks, reading the lessons, just really, really pouring my heart and soul in it to make it work. And so it was a lot of work, and I didn't really know if it was going to work in the end, but I was giving it my all. So now we can kind of jump ahead to Quincy's birth. We decided that my doctor said, I think it's probably time to get her here so that we know she's going to get here safely. These stress tests are looking a little bit concerning, and I really, really, really didn't want to be started. I wanted to go into labor on my own. That was kind of part of this whole birth plan that I had envisioned. And I was, having had a C-section with the twins, this was now a VBAC birth. And so there are some additional risks that come with that and precautions that we needed to take. I really did not. My doctor was in favor of having an epidural placed so that should a complication arise, we would be ready to administer that medication and get to the OR quickly if we needed to. And I kind of fought him on that. I really did not. I felt like I didn't want to admit defeat already, even though I wouldn't be having, I wouldn't be numb. I wouldn't have the medication unless I requested it. I just felt like I didn't, number one, it was going to be expensive because I was going to have to pay the anesthesiologist for coming in, whether I used the medication or not. But it was kind of like, I just wanted to be able to feel like I could do this on my own. And so he was supportive of that. And we made arrangements to come in the next morning and have an induction. And there was a little bit of friction between my doula and my doctor over how the induction should look. And I finally had to say, listen, this is my birth. This is my delivery. I'm going to remember this for the rest of my life. And you're going to deliver her. And both of you will go on and do your own things in your own life and help other women have babies. And that's all great. But for me, this is my experience. And so I decided at that point that the method of induction that sat the best with me with her was to have my water broken. And typically the thinking is that the longer you can labor without having your water broken, the more comfortable you'll be. And so it didn't necessarily make sense that was what felt right to me, but I just really felt strongly that I needed to go with my gut. And that's what my gut was telling me. And so my doctor went ahead and broke my water, and this was first thing in the morning, and we expected, just a long day of labor. And so I put in my earbuds and I started listening to my Hypnobabies tracks and, with the help of my doula, trying different positions and trying to get comfortable. And it really was not very long into my labor when I didn't realize it at the time, but I was in transition. And anybody who's had a baby knows that can be the most difficult part of your labor. And I thought, we've only been doing this for like a little over an hour. There is no way I can do this. I didn't think I could, and started getting nauseated. And my doula had all these essential oils, and she was like rubbing them under my nose, and it was like, I can, and really made a big difference for me as far as handling that nausea. And she just whispered in my ear, I didn't expect to get emotional. She just quietly said, you're in transition and it's not going to be long. And that gave me the jump start that I needed to kind of get my brain back into the game and say, okay, I mean, this is just gone so quickly. I didn't expect to hear that and to be at that point. And so um, she kind of got me into a couple of different positions to see what felt the most comfortable. And the nurse came in and said, let me check you and just see where you're at. And I remember the doctor poking his head in and saying, "Do I have time to change?" And the nurse said, "You do not have time to change. Put on a gown." And so he threw on his gown, and um, it was kind of funny. I at that point I was kind of recentered. I was back where I needed to be. And as we had kind of been talking about this potential induction in the last couple of days of my pregnancy, we were trying to like, okay, what's the silver lining? What can be the good part of having to have an induction? And the day that we decided to induce was August 10th, 2012. So we thought, oh, that'll be cool. Her birthday will be 8/10/12. And I remember as I was leaving my appointment saying to my doctor, like, maybe she can be born, in military time at 2/16 would be 14/16. And that'd be kind of cool. And their birthday would be 8/10/12/14/16. And we all kind of had a chuckle when my doctor got dressed and we looked up at the clock and it was 2:09. And it was like, this might happen. I can do this. I can get this baby here. I've got enough control right now. I'm like, and so I kind of had this little burst of excitement, like, yeah, we're doing this. We are having a baby at 2/16 and she's going to have the most awesome birthday. And so as it came time to push though, like my intuition just said, just let your body do its thing. Don't try and force this. And so 2/16 came and 2/16 went, and she was born at 2/19. And the nurse is like, maybe we can just fudge it. We can put it down. But it was kind of a funny moment. We all had a good laugh over it. And it was like, I just did this. I couldn't believe it. The euphoria that came over me after she was born was unlike anything I had ever experienced before. And I'm sure that was in part due to just, obviously you have now all of a sudden this rush of hormones that comes after you have a baby. And I'm sure that was a big part of it, but just that triumphant feeling of like, I did this. I worked really hard. I focused and I did it. And her labor was just a little over 2 hours. So it all was very quick.
From the breaking of the water.
From the time that my water was broken, it was just a little over 2 hours. So it was very quick.
And so that part was the most difficult part for you. You got back into some sort of zone at the end.
Yeah. I think just realizing that this is transition, and when you hit transition, you're close to the end. The thinking at the time was like, if I have like 10 hours of this left, there's just no way. I can't maintain that stamina for that long. And so once I knew it was transition, it was like, okay, I can do this. We're close. I can do this. And so that was number one. It was a full term birth. I had never experienced that. We got to have her with us right away. I had never had a baby placed on my chest and had that like skin to skin moment right after a birth. So I was on cloud 9 for weeks after her birth. Like every morning I would wake up and kind of relive that experience. And it was just so incredible. It was so wonderful. It was hard. It wasn't that the hypnobirthing made the experience easier, but I think it did help me to, like, it just gave me the tools that I needed to cope with different parts of that labor. It wasn't painless, but it was manageable. And so that was just a really great experience. So because there was almost 6 years between the twins and Quincy, we felt really bad for her, and we didn't want her to be this like lonely little child at the end of our train that would grow up by herself. And so we decided, okay, we're going to have one more. And thankfully with her, we did experience a little bit of infertility there too, but we had kind of ironed out some of the kinks with that long experience with Quincy, and we were able to conceive her pretty quickly. And so I knew I wanted to do the Hypno Babies course again. And I didn't have to practice quite as intensely the second time, honestly, I continued to use the techniques in other aspects of, I mean, even with breastfeeding, it was not always the most comfortable thing. And so being able to kind of use some of those pain management techniques that it taught me helped me to get through some of those rough early days of that. And, with anytime I didn't have a lot of medical procedures, but even with the infertility, there was a little bit. And so those techniques really kind of helped just in my life, outside of giving
I,
birth.
I agree. It's some sort of meditation about it
Right.
that
Right.
helps you with all forms of, even for me, it's sleeping like that. I use
Right.
the same techniques from there to the
Yeah. Right.
sleeping.
Yeah. One of the things that they kind of encourage you to do in hypno babies is, you create a bubble around yourself and you only let in things that are positive. You kind of leave all the negative out. And then they also kind of um like I don't even know how to describe it, but like kind of sending a mental amnesia to any portion of your body that is experiencing discomfort. And so I was able to use that quite a bit. I didn't have to start practicing quite as early in my pregnancy. I was probably, I don't know, maybe 34 weeks when I started practicing with Lindsay, and with her I really did at that point, I had a successful VBAC, so that kind of lowers your risk a little bit. It's like we know that your uterus is probably okay and strong enough to handle that. And um, I, I still did the weekly non-stress tests with her, but everything looked really good. And I really wanted to go into labor on my own, but I was also a little bit afraid because I didn't know yet. It felt weird to be like, this is my fifth pregnancy, and I really still don't feel like I know what I'm doing, but I didn't really know. My big fear with that was, what if she's born on the side of the road because I waited too long to go to the hospital because I didn't know. And so my doula was very reassuring, and she just said, as soon as you feel like you're ready for me to come, I'll be to your house, and I know what to watch for. I know the signs, and I'll be here to let you know it's time to go. You don't need to worry about figuring that out on your own. And so I continued to practice as we got to, I think it was 38 weeks when she was born. She was about 9 days before my due date. And I had gone to the doctor in the morning, and he said, I have a feeling that I'll be seeing you back later today. And, things were progressing. And so I went home, I took a walk around the neighborhood. I just, I was feeling pretty good. And we decided to go grab some dinner. We took the kids and we got dinner. It's kind of funny. I ate the same thing the night before both of these last two girls were born. So Parmesan crusted chicken breast with some buttered noodles at Noodles and Company. If you're looking for anything to like enhance your labor, that might help. But we went and had dinner. We wandered around the mall with the kids for a little bit just to keep walking and moving. And when we got home, Joseph put the kids to bed and I just sat on the couch. He took a picture that I love to look at because you can just tell how in the zone I am. I put my earbuds in, I started listening to these tracks, and the contractions were steady, but they were not so close together that I was concerned at all. And I just sat there on the couch for a couple of hours, just really kind of getting into my zone. And I was just, I just felt great. And I want to say around 9 o'clock, I kind of started feeling like things were picking up. I had been in contact with my doula through all of this from about 4 o'clock on. And she kind of started to panic because she said, I am at another birth with another client. And it was not going very smoothly over there. And she was worried that client was going to end up needing a C-section. And so she said, I'm just kind of playing it by ear, but I have a backup doula and we're just keep in touch with me. And if we need to call her, we can, but I'm going to do my best. I'm hoping that everything will go fine with this and I'll be able to just run right over to you. But that kind of then made my anxiety heighten a little bit because I was kind of counting on her to be the one that says it's time to go. And she wasn't there to do that. So about 9 o'clock, I kind of started feeling like things are picking up. And your mom was going to come down and stay with the kids. And so we called her and said, it's probably time that maybe you start heading down. And so she was about, I don't know, between 45 minutes and an hour away. And so things started picking up. And all of a sudden, about 10 o'clock, I said, I went and took a shower just to kind of see if that warm water would help relax me a little bit. And I had a little bit of bleeding. And so I knew things were progressing. And about 10 o'clock, I don't know what it was that changed, but it was like immediately I knew we needed to get out the door and get on our way to the hospital. So we called our neighbor and said, will you just come and sit with, in our house? Our kids are sleeping, but if you'll just sit here until my mother-in-law arrives, so that we can get on the road. And we were about, I don't know, maybe a 15-minute drive to the hospital. And one of the things in Hypnobabies that she repeats is that, when you're in that zone, that an hour of time can feel like 5 minutes. And that drive, that 20 minutes from our house to the hospital, I don't even remember it happening. It was so fast. That ability to keep myself focused, and it was just, I was like, okay, I know what she means now when she says that, because that's exactly what it felt like. So we're communicating on this drive with my doula, and I had a photographer. I decided on my last birth, I wanted to have a photographer there and have some pictures. And so she was on her way. My doula was not able to make it. She was at this other birth. So she said, do you want me to send the backup doula? And I said, yes. So we were all kind of headed to the hospital at the same time, and we all got there. And the backup doula that she sent was the Hypnobabies instructor that I had met several years before at one of those information nights that I had gone to. And as great as the doula I had hired and used before was, this doula was an absolute godsend for me, because she knew the program inside and out. And I didn't have anybody to give me those cues. There were certain things like a tap on the forehead or a certain word that they would be cues for certain things. And I didn't have Joseph doing those things. So it was all just kind of my own mental capacity that I was using. But when she was there, man, I remember her doing the little tap on my forehead when she could tell that things were getting intense. And the amount of relaxation that came over me was just like immediate. And it was like I was aware of that, and there was a weirdness to it, like, this is actually working. I'm actually experiencing hypnosis, and yet it was fantastic. And so we got to the hospital and checked in, and they checked me, and I was at a 10, and they said, you're ready to go whenever. And all of a sudden I thought, well, see, now there's why I was afraid. I'm at a 10. I could have had this baby on the side of the road. That's right. Why I was afraid of this. This almost happened. And so I really just, they said, whenever you're ready, whenever your body feels ready to start pushing, you can start pushing. And I didn't have those urges immediately. And it was probably about an hour, maybe, sitting at a 10, just kind of letting things happen as my body felt it was, ready to do things. And I remember she was born just after midnight. So it was dark and the lights were down low. And I remember the nurses coming in and getting things set up, and my doctor was there and the photographer was there. We had a pretty full room of people, but it was just so peaceful and so quiet. And everybody was really respectful with just whispering if they had something to say. And it's kind of funny. I was really grateful to have that photographer there, because I can look back at the pictures and see expressions on my face that indicate what I was experiencing was clearly very intense. But I really don't know if I could say I felt pain with that delivery. It was really pretty incredible. And when my body felt ready to push, I pushed, and it was just a couple of pushes and she was here. And I remember feeling very distinctly and acutely all of those sensations of her being born. I remember very specifically when her head turned and she engaged in my pelvis. And like, it brought me to a point of awareness with my own self that was unlike anything I could really ever experience before. And my photographer that night shared a couple of just sneak peek photos that she had taken on Facebook, and she had made the comment, that's the most peaceful birth I've ever been to. That baby was born just in silence, and there was a little squeak, and then just excitement from her being born. And we had to go back after I was discharged. They forgot RH negative, and so I have to have a RhoGAM shot after delivery, and they had forgotten to give that to me before I left, so they called and said, "You need to come back to the hospital." And the nurse that, while we were in the waiting room waiting to go back, the nurse that had been there when I delivered saw us, and she says, "I've never seen such an incredible birth before. That was so amazing. Like, you were just so in tune and in focus." And she said it was just really incredible. And so that last birth was really, I feel like it was kind of the epitome of what you're hoping for when you approach a method like hypnobirthing. It really was all of those things. And I really do think that having that doula there who knew the program and could kind of serve as that partner, I think that really made a difference as I kind of compare the two experiences. I think having that partner person, it can be done on your own for sure, but I think it really can enhance your experience if you have that second person that's kind of there to support you and help you through, and who knows it, who can give you the cues when they're needed, and who can recognize. I even wonder, if Joseph had been more capable of helping me with that, would he have had the same kind of intuition about what I needed when I needed it, as compared to having that doula there who, number one, has seen numerous women give birth and helped support that, but has experienced it herself as well. And so I think that really kind of made a pretty big difference. But that's
incredible.
That's my experience with hypnobirthing. So
if somebody was looking into something like this, you've mentioned some books, mentioned the doula. Is that kind of your recommendation for someone looking into hypnobirthing?
I think everybody's so individual in what feels right for them. This neighbor of mine that kind of introduced me to hypnobirthing in the first place, her husband felt very uncomfortable with the idea of having another person there providing the support that he felt like he could give to her. And so she did that without a doula, because for them it didn't fit. It didn't make sense for them. Where for us, it really did. I would recommend, anybody considering that to certainly seek out several doulas and interview and kind of get a feel for what that option offers to you. And I'm really a big believer in your gut feeling. And so being able to just listen to that, your own intuition about whether that fits for you and whether that's right. And I think the same thing with hypnobirthing. I think for a lot of people, it's probably not the right fit. And if you're looking to do a natural childbirth, there are a lot of other methods out there that are wonderful. And I was able to kind of, with all of the studying that I did, I felt like I took the best pieces of all of those and brought them in and applied them in the way that fit for me. So I really think education is important. Like, I didn't know anything about giving birth when I had those first couple of babies, and just that lack of knowledge really worked against me. And I went into it from a place of fear, and then that heightened all of the things that were hard about it. So I feel like just increasing your knowledge, learning as much as you can, reading as much as you can, taking the things that make sense to you and that feel right and applying them where you can, and not feeling guilty about dismissing the parts that don't. It's just because maybe if you're interested in the Bradley method, there might be an aspect of it that's like, that doesn't really feel right to me. It's okay to let that part go and embrace the parts that do work for you. But if you don't dig in and find the information, it can't help you when you need it. So I really feel like just being willing to put in the time and effort and talking to people, hearing different experiences. I do feel like, I don't know why we do this as women, but when we start talking about our birth experiences, we always are trying to one up each other on like, well, if you think that was hard, you should hear what happened to me, and they're almost like horror stories of all of the hardest parts of childbirth. And I think surrounding yourself with people who look at it from a positive viewpoint and who are willing to say, yeah, it's hard, but then it's all of these really wonderful things. And look what you have to look forward to when it comes time to have your baby. And obviously not every delivery situation goes perfectly, and complications arise. And sometimes, you hear, so many people were like, well, don't write a birth plan because then you'll just be disappointed if it doesn't happen. And some people will say, definitely write a birth plan because if you go into it with expectations, they're more likely to come true. And, all of these things, and this back and forth. And I chose to do a birth plan with both of mine. And I was very realistic about it. Having VBACs on those last two, I knew that there was a very real possibility that they could end in a C-section. And if they did end in a C-section, it would probably be an emergency situation. I had already given birth vaginally, so I wasn't somebody that was going into a VBAC without a knowledge of that. So we knew that I could give birth that way. But, having a scar on your uterus presents some extra challenges. And so I feel like I went into it very realistically and very pragmatically as far as like, this might happen. And if it does, then we need to shift gears. And I'd like a C-section experience to be this, because with my C-section, it was very clinical. The doctors were talking about their weekend plans, and I was on the table having these babies delivered, but I really didn't feel like a part of the experience. And so I knew that if I ended up with a C-section in these other situations, these are the things that I expect from my providers. I don't want you talking over me. I want you talking to me. I want you to remember that this is my birth experience. And so for me, a birth plan was very helpful because I just felt like, and I was realistic about it, that it might change. You can't ever go into it expecting things to be exactly the way that you envision it. But I also kind of believe in that mind-body connection. And if your mind tells you that it's so, there's a much higher likelihood that will happen. And so I feel like just being open to the possibility of change and being willing to embrace that and then make the best of whatever that situation turns into is important as well.
No, I just love what you said about surrounding yourself with, we know that there's going to be horror stories, but surrounding yourself also with the possibilities of some beautiful experiences. And
right.
I love that.
Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like I just think it's important to educate yourself, to think positively. Like, I feel like Heavenly Father made us. I mean, women are made to give birth. Like, our bodies are created in such a way that is something that we're made to do. And it looks different for all of us, but I just feel like understanding that, that divine nature that we have to be mothers and to use our bodies as a tool to get those spirits here is incredible. It can really, just embracing that thought can really, what's the word I'm looking for? It can just enhance your experience and make it a more spiritual and strength. Yeah. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Jenn, thanks so much. This has been really informative. That was a lot of experiences that hit several different areas of like you said, you've had the wide expanse of everything that
right
almost possible.
I haven't given birth at home or in water, and I'm old enough now that I know I will not experience those things. But other than that, I feel like I've kind of done it all. So
you really have. Thanks so much for talking about all that. And yeah, thank you. That was a lot of good information. We're gonna say goodbye, and thanks, Jenn, again, and just keep learning.